Welcome, welcome. So this is really interesting, and I just want to explain this in detail because Ticeman did a great job. So Yvette Cooper in August, despite what her officials said today, said we need to have a report into extremism, and I want you to look at all of the things. And this was done by her own officials in the Home Office. Now, we've sat here for months and everybody says they're not fit for purpose, but the report that came back made 2 points. One was that two-tier policing as a claim is right-wing extremism. Right, we're right-wing then. And also, that should be brought down and that should be quashed, but what they really need to concentrate on is bringing back non-crime hate incidents. She was so appalled by this, Yvette Cooper, she said, no, I don't want this. It got leaked. This is the main source of people's anger today. My point about this is, we look across the pond at a man who said 9 days ago, whether you like it or not, I'm shackling them and they're going. Whether I have to take on Colombian presidents, they're going, right? Today we hear that Donald Trump has had some kickback from certain officials in government buildings who don't agree with his policy. So he's fired them. Good. I want to know why we are all sitting here accepting the fact that apparently civil servants, in the words of Jack Elson from The Sun just said, are unsackable. They can use our money to take a government to court on a policy they don't agree with. Anybody who wants to make anything happen in this country, Russell Quirk, has to start by dealing with the civil service. I think it's a disgrace.
Yeah, we have said it for some time on this channel that you have, I think you referred to them just now as the blob. Call them what you like. We have a lot of unaccountable civil servants with their own agendas, whether it's within the Home Office and Border Force, whether it's in the police, the education system, and so on, social services, whereby those individuals with their own agendas are willfully ignoring the will of the politicians that are elected, and they're doing it, you know, for their own purposes. And I suspect the reason that they're getting away with it is because we have had in recent years a succession of hapless politicians that lean into the civil service far too much,
rather than have their own belief and I'm going to do this at all costs and you can give me whatever.
You'll be familiar, because you're old enough, with Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister. Those of you over the age of 50-ish will remember
Queen
that
Mother's
from the
favourite
70s.
programme, by the way.
Well, and you know, I mean, just to kind of explain exactly what that was, it's effectively a comedy parody on the fact that the civil service do indeed tell politicians, including prime ministers, what to do, because they know best. They've been there for a long time and they've been through the whole experience and so on.
Seriously, we are old, but it is fantastic. If you haven't seen it, just go. Why don't you get it online?
Many politicians, including Thatcher, said, yeah, that is actually really what it's like being in Parliament. So what we must do is exactly what Donald Trump is doing, and he talked about this in 2016 and didn't really do it, but now he is, which is to drain the swamp. The swamp is not just politicians, it is permanent secretaries, civil servants, those, the likes of whom have written this report, which is one of the most egregious, biased documents I've ever had the misfortune of reading. Thank goodness Yvette Cooper has an ounce of sense, at least, to say, do you know what, even for me,
but hold on a second, why doesn't she go further and out the people that wrote this crap? Because that, I mean, you know, in an instant I would have gone good on you, Yvette Cooper, right? And that would be listening to the British public.
And so we talked about the quality of the civil service and the fact that they are doing their own thing, you know, pretty much, you know, without being checked by politicians. Let's look at the stats in terms of how many there are now. So during the pandemic, the government of the time, so you know, Boris, Rishi Sunak and so on, said that we need more civil servants because we've got to cope with all of this stuff around you know, COVID and you know, all of the money that was going into COVID loans and so on. But the consequence since the pandemic, so the last 2 or 3 years, is that not only did we not then remove those civil servants, we've actually increased. In fact, the Labour government, they've only been in power for 7 months, Jeremy, have already increased the civil service by about 10,000 people. It now sits at 500,000 people.
Sorry?
500,000 civil servants
in London?
No, total civil servants.
500,000.
So, yeah,
and you can't get a passport, you can't get a driving licence, and we don't have any border control.
At a salary cost each year of, wait for it, 16 billion pounds. And so we've got more of them doing less and still, it seems, insistent, despite the fact that we now have a government that you would imagine that they would favour because they're all of the left.
Yeah, no, Keir Starmer said already, doesn't he? He came out 2 days ago and said they're causing me
still causing problems.
I long for a politician. I don't actually care who that politician. I suspect it would be a Farage-type person who will take the blob on. Listen to this. So this, I mean, to me as well, like this two-tier policing. I rail against that, right? So I rail against being told by a civil servant or a politician, in this case a vegan bloody left-wing item, that actually, because I dare to think that when I look at that Manchester airport thing, 2 Muslim men were in an area that's heavily... I mean, they'd have been shot in America,
on
right?
CCTV to see.
I do not in any way condone seeing the video footage of the policeman kicking that person in the head, because that was the first thing I saw. Those policemen were rightfully suspended instantly, right?
Yeah, but then we saw context.
Then we saw more, and we saw a police woman having her nose broken. It took a further 6 months. There is undoubtedly, in my humble opinion... Let me give you an example about the Southport riots. We talked last week, didn't we, about Starmer and not being more honest about Axel Rudabikana. And he stood up and he said, everybody that takes to the streets is far right. That's politicising problems in this country. But this goes very deep, in my humble opinion. And it says to me that anything they don't agree with, anything they consider is against their ideology, is going to be labelled. And I think Starmer is part of that, to be fair.
This report, despite the fact that it looks like ministers are not going to accept its recommendations, well, let's hope they don't recommend any of them, but I suspect 1 or 2 will slip through. It is not only biased, it not only casts everybody that has been critical of two-tier policing, which, by the way, is not just reform and the right wingers of society that have said two-tier policing clearly exists, because the evidence is there for us all to see. Even Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the left-leaning Conservative, but she said that two-tier policing is in evidence. So this report...
I read this from Steve Chandler. This is brilliant. Labelling someone who claims two-tier policing as extremists while turning a blind eye to actual extremists is, quite honestly, the very definition of two-tier policing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's true, isn't it?
Yeah, but what the report also does, just in précis, it plays down, it dumbs down the threat of Islamic extremism, even though the head of MI5 has said 75% of our focus and our resources is on Islamic extremism. It then talks about not just the fact that if you talk about two-tier policing, you are an extremist. It also then says that the biggest threat, apart from the far right, is conspiracy theorists, and they should be labelled as extremists. Well, I know there's some nutters out there.
And Just Stop Oil.
Although I have to say, a lot of conspiracy theories that we've heard over the last few years, particularly around COVID and indeed Southport, have come true. They turned out not to be conspiracy theories, but to be factual. But here's another thing. This report, they also want to label misogynists as extremists. They also want now to ensure that the police, who are hapless in terms of their...
Don't say blacklist.
Hapless in terms of their lack of resources. They want to ensure that the police now are even busier dishing out those ridiculous non-crime hate incidents.
I know.
This
hurty words.
Yes. So, I mean...
So you can blow somebody up or rape them, but hurty words are more important. Can I just take a call? Loads of people. We're going to keep you for a while because you can earn your money. Peter's in London. Russell Quirk is with me. What you got, Pete?
Hi, both, just 2 quick points. Yvette Cooper, she's been an MP for ages. She's hopeless. She should resign. The second point, I live near to Sarah Sharif, where she lived. I've contacted the council. They've only started the review when they promised it would start after Christmas. And that is a disgrace, isn't it?
I have friends who live 100 yards from Sarah Sharif and that poor girl and what she did. I have to be really careful, Pete, because yet again, I don't understand. We seem to have our priorities wrong. I mean, that Sharif is an evil human being, and I'm not going to get into a debate about what will happen. Did you notice, thanks Pete, did you notice, this is just factual by the way, Ryan, don't go, did you notice that Sarah Sharif's father had been attacked in prison?
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago he was sliced with the remnants of a tuna tin. Let's just leave that there for a second.
Just let silence for 15 seconds, absolutely, that's radio for you. I worry about a society that, I don't know how to best put this, but we're mates, about a society that seems to the victim is irrelevant. We seem to have governments, officials, civil servants who look to make an excuse for any group or organisation that can claim, oh, we're a minority, or, oh, do you know what, misogynists are terrorists. I mean, I hate Just Stop Oil, but they're putting Just Stop Oil, by the way, in this report, those eco-idiots who should just, I mean, honestly, I know what I do with them and it's not printable or even speakable,
well,
but they're putting them with Islamic, they're putting that, somebody said to me, two-tier policing doesn't exist. What happened with the Rotherham gangs? The police in Rotherham admitted it took 8 years because they were concerned it would cause cultural division.
Well, this is the report itself, Jeremy, that's been leaked. And it's been leaked rather than it being published. Note that. It's had to be leaked by someone.
Richard Ty said, is there a good person there, or is this to get back at Yvette Cooper for turning it down?
I don't know. Maybe they thought that she was kind of, up for the whole leadership thing, as Wes Streeting and Bridget Phillipson are, and they decided to leak it because of, trying to neutralise her. I don't know. But the report itself is two-tier. The report itself is biased because it plays down Islamic extremism and talks about, no, the real threat is the far right. And by the way, everyone's far right that objects to anything that the government's doing.
That's exactly what I said.
And if you're a misogynist or a conspiracy theorist, as a consequence of that, then, you are the bad guys. The other thing that, again, we should be very, very worried about, this is a theme now over the last few weeks in all speeches, everything that is coming out from government, either in reports like this or from the politicians themselves, is the need to censor social media. As soon as we end up allowing that, well, free speech has gone out the window, but it then becomes truly Orwellian, where the last part of the whole tyrannical process is do not believe your eyes and ears. So as soon as you get rid of social media in terms of censoring what people say, frankly, no matter how distasteful, then you end up literally with true tyranny on the basis that the government then are controlling what we see and hear.
I fear for so much. I mean, this to me is a central feature, as is the other news today. Very quickly, we'll take some more calls. Migration will push Britain's population to an astonishing 72.5 million within the next 7 years. In fact, Henry Bolton says it's going to be way more than that.
We're shocked. I mean, even in the budget, Rachel Reeves had accounted, I think, over the next 5 years. Rachel from Accounts.
Richard III.
She had, nice to hear. She had accounted for the fact in her numbers that we would have to accommodate another 2.5 million people in the next Parliament.
Despite the fact that our public services are creaking, and still some on the left would say, not bothered about Beryl in Rochdale who can't see the doctor. These people are escaping war-torn countries. We need to spend 8 billion a day or 8 million, whatever, to put them in hotels. Surely they need to see a doctor.
Well, safe routes for everybody,
it does my head in. Back to the phone lines. We're going to Nottingham. Adam, you're on tour. Drive, and Russell Quirk is with me. What you got?
Oh, yeah, no, it's so nice and refreshing to hear someone vocalise what I've been saying for years about, I work in social housing, and I see loads of people just doing nothing, claiming benefit, doing nothing with the BMW in the driveway and their 60-inch TV on the wall, yet they're doing nothing. And I totally agree with, if you're on benefits and you work in capable age, you should be out there earning, working for the community.
Adam, this is just for Russell, wasn't it? I said this earlier, and I've said this for a long time, and some people, even in this building, look at me like I've landed from Mars. I don't understand a system. I understand, actually, I should start that differently, and I really support a system that says, we want you to pay your tax to help people who can't help themselves. In fact, I think that's fantastic. However, the system is now so devoid of any sense and has so many loopholes that it's become a career choice. And it was never meant to be a career choice. And what worries me, and what Adam is saying, is what I said earlier. So I'm told that we have to bring migrants in to fill and plug the gaps on those sort of jobs, hospital porters, whatever it is. I'm not being disrespectful to anybody when I say that. I would not swallow the BS that says that every person who claims benefit is mentally or disabled. I think there's a lot who, sorry, I'm going to say it, lazy and basically entitled and don't want to work. And I'd say, I want you, whether it's cutting an old lady's lawn or painting somebody's fence or picking up some rubbish, I want you to give something back to society. Nothing wrong with that, Adam. Nothing wrong with that, Russ, is there?
No, so the reality check is there are now in Britain 22 million people on one benefit or another.
My God.
Mainly universal credit. 22 million. It's a third of the population are on a benefit or other.
And the genuine people who need help never get jack.
No, and you also now have hundreds of thousands, I think the number's something like 300,000 or 400,000 families that are now third generation that have never worked. So them, their fathers and their grandfathers, their mothers and their grandmothers have never ever worked. We also have 1 million people off on benefits on, not with long-term proper clinical depression, but just with anxiety. just, I don't want to come in and sit next to that Jeremy fella because he intimidates me a little bit, or I don't like the plant pot in the corner because it's in the wrong place, or I don't like the fact my boss tells me what to do on a regular basis 9 to 5.
Have we become totally soft, Adam?
Yes, I believe so. I mean, I'll just quickly tell you my experience is I went on the dole many years ago for 1 year, and I had to go on the dole for 1 year in order to get an apprenticeship. I did say to them, I'm willing to start the apprenticeship now and go now. But they says, no, I have to be unemployed for 1 year in order to qualify for this. And I go, that's ridiculous. That's money after money. And I'm here willing to work now, earn my apprenticeship now so I can work skillfully for the rest of my life.
That's another thing I'm really, really strong on, and I think we've got it wrong with education here. Every kid should stay and do maths. Sorry, I deviate, but apprenticeships are so important.
Yeah.
Returning to work apprenticeships, people of 55 who maybe the world's changed. But Adam, yeah, the danger is, of course, we're not here, but because we're allowed to say as we see it, but it is quite frightening to think that if you say the truth, there are lazy... look, I can't tell you the town, but I did a show once, and I was living on benefits for... you can find it. I lived on benefits
for... You did?
No, I did, for a week.
Wow.
And I want to say where, Preston. And I literally remember the first morning, Adam, the camera crew and I, and honestly, and I'm stood in this street at 10 to 7, honestly, hand on heart, doing my first link. I think I got £26.25 for the week, right? Didn't enjoy it. Fact of life. Every single curtain was closed. Every single house in that street on my children's life had a Sky dish, and 50% of them had a new car. And I remember standing there thinking, where I come from, you'd have been out of bed and down looking for a bloody job, because that's how it was. You had to graft. And I just worry, under our guise of trying to help, that we've made it too easy, Ad, to help people out. Final word from you. Would you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that, absolutely. I think that what you were saying earlier about anxiety, it breeds it, and then you're too scared to do it. I was too scared. I'm always too scared to start a new job. You've got that anxiety, but you push through. You've got to push through, otherwise you end up sitting on and the world passing by and doing no good for nobody. And I do believe in national service, not necessarily going to the army. Or
you don't think the army wants this lot? You don't think the army wants this lot, do you? They wouldn't go near them. I was brought up by a woman who went, you have to graft or you don't eat. And I also, in a nicer way, would say that if you are long-term unemployed and you do some community service, or however we describe it, that gives you the confidence, that gets you into routine. It's something for you to put on your CV and talk to would-be employers about. I feel really strongly. Adam in Nottingham, thank you very much indeed